Hey, what's up, everyone? Darius here at Marketing 360, and this is episode 3 of the Small Business Diaries, where I get the chance to connect with the very people who are really maintaining the backbone of our great economy, small business owners who are building businesses, helping communities flourish, helping households flourish, you name it, the pathway of entrepreneurship with small business. And today I have the pleasure of being with Ashon Avent, founder of Main Avent Sports and Apparel, based out of Norwich. Is it Norwich or Norwich, Connecticut?
Norwich, Connecticut.
Norwich. He's been in business for 6 years, currently has a couple employees and a ton of interns, and they specialize in designing and customizing anything athletic apparel, jerseys, uniforms, sweats, you name it, they do it. They've worked with some high profile people and brands along his 6-year journey. Ashon, welcome to the Small Business Diaries.
Thank you so much for having me, Darius. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Very honored, very humble, and very thankful, for the opportunity to talk and hopefully encourage some other people, whether small business or entrepreneurship is for them, or just to give somebody encouragement to keep on going.
Yeah, let's go. So for starters, how'd you even end up becoming an entrepreneur? No one comes out of the womb running a business, but how'd you become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it all starts off, depending on your demographics and when you grow up at, you always try to find a way to, hustle to make up some extra bread, or extra money, to help you along the way. And I always had this niche about finding these extra little hustles at times. And I just knew it was in me, even though I went to college, I got my degree, I got my bachelor's degree, I got my MBA, my master's in business, and working in corporate America was great. Some great opportunities. I learned a lot, but I always felt like something was missing. I always felt like I always had an extra hunger to do something outside of work or hustle up some extra money. And hustle doesn't necessarily mean anything illegal.
Right.
Just means an opportunity for you to just work for what you want. Kind of like lions, they hunt, right? And I felt like I was a lion and I wanted to hunt a little bit for what I wanted to eat. So that's kind of how I got into entrepreneurship.
Did you, so it wasn't really nobody said anything to you. It was more of just like, I just see an opportunity here and I'm going after it.
Yeah, it's kind of, I stumbled upon some things. I was in the mortgage industry before the crisis hit. So I always liked that. I was, into mortgages and helping people out. And then also just just always trying to find a little niche to give something back to people. I always try to, get into those type of things. And I never really found the one that I was like, oh yeah, this is for me. So I kept trying so many different things, and trying to reinvent myself. And then finally, I say, I'll probably just try to take a chance on myself, and push myself a little bit.
So now that was 6 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk about that transition, because there's a lot of people out there that, they do want to start their own business, but people have plenty of preconceived notions about, I can't do this, or I need to save this amount of money, or this thing or that thing. And, that either speeds up the process or slows it down. So what was that actual transition like for you? Did you dump all your savings? Did you have savings, or how did it work?
Yeah, I didn't dump all my savings. I kind of still kept my main job and then hustled on the side, and learning. You got to learn your craft. You got to perfect your craft. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to do this and just jump out there, dump all your savings, not unless you're buying like a franchise or something like that.
Yeah.
For me, I felt like I had to work myself or hustle my way out of the job that I was in. I didn't really feel like, you can just jump out there, and say, okay, here I am, sink or swim. I never agreed with that technique at all, but some people can do that. They have the backing or the resources. So I kind of saved up some money, invested it, tested the process, tested it again and tested it again. So I could feel confident about what I was doing. And that way, as I started to do that, I started bringing in clients, ones and twos, to kind of test it to see, okay, if this really has some legs that it can grow, right? So I didn't always just start off with, the whole big shebang. I kind of took it by piece, and kind of felt comfortable to get my confidence up, to do something different, and jump out there. You got to have confidence. You got to believe in yourself, because people will know if you're BSing them or not, right? And they'll know if you're not confident in what you do, if you're a little shaky and your voice is cracking. So I just continue to just work on my craft to get there, to know and be knowledgeable about what I wanted and what I was doing. So that's kind of how I ease my way into it.
Yeah, for sure. I dig it. Why did you choose the apparel design and customization route as a business model?
Yeah, I always felt like, growing up in the inner city, we always had the shortage or the leftovers of different things, right? And that's kind of how it started, working, being in Parks and Rec. We might have a jersey with the number falling off in the front, and we got to go and play against everybody, in these different towns, and they come in with the bags and the uniforms,
Yeah,
and
they
you're like,
sweet.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like, wow, they really geared up. I mean, we still gonna beat y'all, but y'all look pretty good though, right? And and that's kind of where I wanted to start at, was giving something back to the coaches in the community, that was doing stuff. I wanted to provide them with an opportunity, to look good. So that was kind of the slogan I came up with: look good, play good, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to make apparel for them. So I started connecting and making custom apparel for just the teams in the inner city.
Walk us through a little bit of that act. You said earlier you tested, you reiterated, and you found out, okay, this works, this doesn't work. Take someone who, okay, let's just say, for example, they are interested in doing the same kind of work that you're doing, the same kind of business model. Take us through that testing process. Like, are we talking, setting up wholesale accounts, that type of thing, finding people who can do the screen printing, yada, yada. What was that like?
At first, I started off with no equipment, right? So I didn't have any of my own equipment at all. So what I did was find some people that I can connect with and build a contract with to say, okay, give me your wholesale price. Let me find the price in between that I can make some profit with, and then retail it to other people.
Yeah.
So I was just a middleman at first, right? So I found some suppliers that said, hey, yeah, we can do that for you. So what I did was I spent a little bit of my money, saw how long it took for a turnaround time, tested the quality. So I went to like 3 or 4 different suppliers to say, okay, I got this amount of money. Let me see your turnaround time. Let me see your price. Can I customize? Can I not customize? What type of design do you have? So I kind of did that, with 3 or 4 people. And I said, okay, this is what I can do. And then from that point, I said, I feel comfortable now. Maybe I can, gather some accounts. So I got 1 or 2 people that I knew, hey, do you mind if I make your uniforms this year? This is the price I'll give you. So the first couple of times I didn't make any money, right? It was just a hobby, the thrill, to get some new people in. And then from that point on, then I started to say, okay, how did the process feel for you? And got feedback from them to say, oh, this is dope. I like this. Can we change this? And from that point on, I kind of took those ideas and that feedback and then started to do more and more. And then finally, after I contracted with people, I say, you know what, the turnaround time is some in between. I need some in between. How can I service the people in between? And that's when I started to invest in my own equipment and my own process.
Mm. So that first, and that's that first year, you're still working, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Still working full time. Yeah.
Still working full time. Did you have a family at that point?
Still got family. Yep.
Still got a family.
Yep.
All right. So you're still doing that. I'm curious to know, like, during that first year, were there any, I mean, you obviously had the qualification on paper, you had the education, you worked in the actual corporate space, but now you're stepping into running a business where it's all on you. And so at that point, did you find any personal roadblocks or any challenges you had to overcome? Like, man, I'm not as organized as I thought, or I'm not good at sales. What were some of those things?
Paying attention to the details. Details matter, right? My first large uniform order I got, I didn't know any better. I didn't think about a sizing chart. I didn't think that there was a difference in sizing chart between USA or Asia or the UK. So when I first got those uniforms, it was a huge check, right? $2,000, right? They got the uniforms. They called me on the phone and was like, bro, what the hell is this? Yo, this not our size, right? So I had to do the whole entire order again. So whatever I thought I was going to make, I didn't make because I had to redo the order again. So I lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
First time. Second time I got an order was for somebody and the color was off, right? Because that orange background that you have, right? That's a specific orange. That's a specific color. So people use different color charts and different combinations of color ink to determine what color orange that is. So there's a color code or a challenge that they use or chart that they use. It's called CMYK, right? So in order to get to that color back there, there has to be a certain CMYK color code. That's not just orange. That's actually tangerine. So if you don't know those things, you order orange and there's a Syracuse orange versus a Texas burnt orange. There's a totally different thing, right? And that's what happened the second time. Was like, oh, okay, I got the size right, but the color's wrong now. So now there's more money that went out there. So even the most education that you have doesn't prepare you for being an entrepreneur, and that's the reality. And I've learned more now as an entrepreneur than I learned in my master's degree and my business degree.
Come on.
Right. And that's the truth. And they don't really teach a lot about entrepreneurship, especially coming where I come from. There's different type of entrepreneurs, and they don't always learn how to use a purchase order. They don't know how to use accounts receivable, accounts payable. So those are some of the things I did learn, being involved in different organizations while I was in college, right? So my experience outside of the classroom is what will prepare me for being an entrepreneur, learning how to do project management, right? How to see something from start to finish, how to take something from concept design to actually making it come out to have a physical a piece. Those are the things that I learned. So the confidence to do what you say you can do was something I had to really get behind. I really had to learn and say, yeah, I can really do this. I need to work on this. So those are the type of things that I had to, overcome. That fear of asking people, right? Hey, do you mind? Or, hey, reaching out. Or, hey, I see that you're doing that. And I used a lot of social media to connect with a lot of people, just inboxing, hey, I'm interested. That's how I met you. Hey, Darius, how are you? Right. Just shooting a DM, right?
Right.
But making sure it's appropriate too, because you only got a few seconds to catch somebody's attention, right? And learning how to do that through Instagram, you got to learn how to get a no. But if you never overcome that, then you can't really get to where you want to be at. And that's one thing I had to learn, is to learn to overcome no.
Yeah, for sure, man. Now, along that way, what was that like on your wife and your kids?
It was difficult because I would work during the day, kind of service them a little bit, in the afternoons, and then get right back to it at night, and I kind of failed, honestly, in the balance, in the work-life balance, and in truth, I failed, right? And my wife wasn't.
What do you mean you failed? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I failed because when you have to balance your work life, right? And you take care of your kids, but you have to make sure that your household is in order as well, too. So you can't just think that just because you want to be an entrepreneur is the best thing for your family, right? It was something that I learned that, this might not have been the best time, but I was so ambitious and went for it. I kind of tuned out, and I didn't, give my wife the attention and the detail that she needs, to keep our relationship on the up and up, right?
Absolutely.
And that, and that's gonna be an honest point where I failed in that part, because I didn't really, I was just thinking about dollars, and I was just thinking about making it, and I was just thinking about being an entrepreneur. But at the same time, you got to learn that you got to balance the family life. And that was, I failed that miserably until I finally started to come around and understand there has to be a balance. At some point, you got to shut it off. You can't just hustle all day. Like it can't, it has to be different 4 areas that you have to take care of, your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual, right? And those are part of the things as a man that I had to learn. It's 4 areas, not just one.
Yeah. So what did that pivot look like? So you recognize, oh man, I'm falling, I'm slipping here, husband, dad mode, I'm slipping. How did you begin to pivot and begin to get that back on track? What did that look like for you and the family?
Yeah, you got to slow down, right? You got to slow down. And for me, resulting in us, taking a break in our relationship, we gone, we went our separate ways. And that when I realized we went our separate ways, then it really hit me like, you can't just hustle 24/7, and you got to be intentional about the things that you do. You got to be present in the moment. You can't spend time with the family, but you're still on your phone working, right? You got to shut it down at some point. Somebody has to get your undivided attention. If not, then it slips through the cracks. So that's one thing I had to learn is like, you know what? I got to slow down and be intentional. I got to be present in the moment. So the people that I'm with, I'm trying not to be on my phone taking calls 100 different times, or, oh, hold on one second, hold on. After a while, it gets annoying after a while. So that's what I had to learn is, be intentional and be present in the moment.
Yeah, that's real, man. I appreciate you even admitting that, because I think sometimes we see a lot of, especially on social, right? You can see a lot of the success. You can hear a lot of the stories of how we grew the business. We did this, we did that. But oftentimes I don't think we touch enough on the reality that sometimes it gets rough along the way.
It does. And and secondly too is it's a decision that you have to make, especially if you got somebody involved with a family. It's a decision you have to make as a family. Sometimes as men, we let our pride and our ego get in the way, and we let our greed get in the way, and we make decisions based on our ego, but not necessarily decisions that's always based around our family. It sounds good to be an entrepreneur, but when you get in the fire and you got to hunt every day to eat, it becomes a challenge. It becomes stressful, right? And where's that next dollar coming from? Everyone wants to make six figures, but at the end, or seven figures, but at the same time, you got to have a plan to do that, right? How many people you need to talk to every day? How many accounts you need to get to every day? How many, different connections that you need to make to even get one closed sale, right? And those are the things that, become difficult when you become an entrepreneur. And then secondly is how much time does that take away from your loved ones, right?
Yeah.
Things that you're going to do. Is it a night thing? Is it a weekend thing? Is it an all day thing? Where you got to take time off of work on your lunch break? Those are some of the things that we don't really consider, when we're doing this entrepreneur thing.
Well, you actually touch a little bit more on that aspect of like, okay, I want to grow, but I need a plan to do that. And because one of the pieces in having a plan is you have to know numbers, you have to know, what's out there. You have to know your margins. You have to know the time, all these different things. And so maybe touch a little bit on how someone actually begins to plan for growth.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I mean, you don't have to have a finance degree. You just need to be able to add. If I want to make $20, how much do I have to sell to make $20? If I want to make $100, what do I want to make? And you have to take into account, your cost of goods sold, right? How much does it cost you per item? And how much of a markup can you put on that so you can get a profit, right? And that's really business 101. How much is your expense? How much does it cost you, right? And how much markup can you put on it versus the price, right? And then the price is the key. You got to know your competitors. Like, you got to know who's around you that's doing what. If you don't have a specialty niche and you have something that someone else has, then you got to look at your competitive pricings. Are you pricing higher, or are you lower, or are you somewhere in between?
When you talk about that markup piece, because you can mark up to a point where it becomes
the game. Yes, right. Absolutely. Yes.
So what, how do you, like, what was that like? Because it's easy. You're like, man, I can do this. Yeah, I see people out there sometimes, I'm like, I know that sweatshirt, it was cheap and it's like $54, right? So I know if I buy this, the markup on this is stupid high, and it becomes less attractive. So maybe give some people some advice on how to not cross that line with that markup to where you actually take out the attractiveness of your offer.
Yeah, and that's kind of where you have to be realistic with yourself. Like, everyone wants to price, I'll give you a prime example. Like when Nipsey Hussle came out with his Crenshaw shirts, right? Sweatshirts, they were $100. Well, that's because he had a following and he had brand loyalty from people that were loyal to Nipsey to say, oh, Crenshaw, that's me, $100 sweatshirt, hoodie, whatever, right? That's the same person that sold his mixtape for $100. But you have to remember that he has that type of following and that command for that. But when you're entry level, sometimes you can use the same supplier, the same material, but people may not feel like you're brand loyal to that, to where it's the same thing with Gucci, right? Or Ferragamo or Balenciaga, right? Their brands, it could be the same material that I use, but their brand loyalty and their prestige that they have to sell a sweatshirt at 120 is a little bit different than some of us, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of have to be realistic. Like, okay, what is Old Navy pricing their sweatshirts for, right? What is, the people at your local, streetwear fashions? Supreme is in a different case because they do drops and they only have a limited amount of supply.
Right.
You have a hysteria demand.
Economics, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so you have to, supply and demand is cool. So if you have a lot of supply of your sweatshirts and the demand is low, then obviously your price is too high. But if you have a small supply and people are beating down your door and the demand is high, then you can say, okay, you know what, I could charge a higher price.
Yeah, let's go.
A premium price, right? So there's always three things. There's good, there's better, and there's best, right? So you can have those three options for people. You can say, hey, I got something that's base level, I got something that's medium level, then we got more of a high price, but you have to justify the high price. You just can't put a sticker on a shirt and say, okay, it's $100, right? It has to justify that. Is there embroidery in there? Is there a unique design? Is the sweatshirt heavier than the other shirts? Is it butter soft? Does it last in the washing machine more? Those are the type of things that add value to your customers that are going to want to pay that price.
Yeah, come on. Now, 6 years in, at what point did you transition from I'm doing the job, I still got my job on the side, that's actually providing oxygen for the business. At what point in the journey did it mark the transition for you to be able to actually step away?
Yeah, when the money started to equate to where I was making if I was having a part-time job.
Okay. So you basically matched the salary that you had.
Yeah. But I had multiple hustles though. It wasn't just one. It was multiple streams of income. I got income here, I got income here, and I got income here that compares to me to where I want to be at, right? So that for, I can continue to do what I'm doing, but I still have the income to supplement where I was making before when I was working in corporate America or working, in a normal salary job. So I didn't just jump out there. Incrementally, I got there and replaced the hustles. And then eventually I got laid off, from the job I was at. And then from that point on, I said, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm making more money part-time than I am working full-time here. So I'm just going to go for it. And that's when I said, okay, let me take a leap.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Now you got two employees, you got a bunch of interns working at the shop. How do you approach leadership? Because not everyone, the entrepreneur, they should be the hardest worker, right? It's their business, it's their dream. But how do you approach leadership? What's really been the building blocks of you understanding here's how I lead people to really be effective at this operation?
Yeah, it's through education and giving them empowerment. You got to build them up. You got to invest into your people, right? You got to invest into them and you got to teach them, right? You got to teach them from the ground up. So my philosophy is I'm never going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do for myself, period. So if I'm going to ask you to sweep the floor or fold, I'm going to sweep the floor and fold, right? If I'm going to ask you to, to lift these heavy boxes, I'm going to lift that. But at the same time, I'm educating you as we go along so you understand why that's important.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, leadership does start from the top down, but it also starts from the bottom up. So I'll listen. I'm transparent, I'm open with them, and I listen to their ideas. But at the same time, I try to give them some fundamentals to go off of so that way they can be free thinkers and think on their own.
Let's go. I dig that, man. I think so we talked a little bit about, the reality of being an entrepreneur, but what are talk to the person who's about to start a business or they think they want to start a business. And now we've touched obviously on, keep your job. If you need to keep your job, you keep your job and you build. Yep. But what would be some of your advice that touches on some of the common misconceptions about entrepreneurship?
It was a good question. That your time is your own, really. It's really not. I probably work more now as an entrepreneur than I've ever worked in my life. Before it was 40 hours. I'm checking out. It's Friday. Hey, meet me at so-and-so so we can, hang out for a little bit, right? At 4:30, 5 o'clock, for those get-togethers, right? Yeah. It's not like that. I'm still working on Friday at 4:30, 6:30, 7:30, 8 o'clock sometimes, trying to pump out orders, right? And then I got to come in on Saturday. Then Sunday, I might give a little touch up because there's some things that need to get done. So really the misconception is that you have a flexibility of schedule. Sometimes that's not the case. When the demand is there and you got people asking you for things and you give deadlines, sometimes you got to get it done no matter what, and you can't put it off to the next day, right? Because you got to do what you said you was going to do. And sometimes you fail at that, and honestly, the biggest conception is if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to get used to failing, right? Because you fail your way to success. You don't learn any other way. Like when you win a trophy, you remember the trophy, because you won and you brag about it. But the way you lost coming into that, you rethink that, right? Because when you win all the time, you don't think that there's anything wrong. You think that what you've done was right. So you've created a winning formula. But it's not until you lose that you say, wow, maybe I could have did that differently. or wow, it doesn't really sting until you got to replace something for $2,000, or it doesn't really sting until the customer says, I want to go somewhere else because you didn't do X, Y, and Z for me, right? And then you remember those lessons. You say, you know what? And let me do that differently. So essentially, I would say you got to fail your way to success, and you can't be afraid to fail. And that's the key. Is that everyone talks about that, but fear is what holds us back. Failure is what holds us back. And that's something that you got to get comfortable as an entrepreneur. You're going to fail somewhere along the way. You can't always safeguard it the entire time. And I'm not saying the whole thing is a failure because I don't want to scare anybody, but I want to be real with you to say, hey, you got to be willing to take a loss somewhere, but there is loss mitigation where you can minimize your losses by learning from someone else.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of my advice would say, learn from somebody else, and get a mentor and, try to get up under someone's wing and they'll teach you. Right. They will learn from their losses.
Now you're, like, as I was saying, you're 6 years in the game, you're doing this, we're doing the custom apparel design. What does the future look like for you? Because there's plenty of people that have that same type of business model, but what's the future looking like for your business, for Main Avent Sports, in terms of how we're going to continue to be unique, even go into different new boundaries, practice new strategies, form new relationships? Like I saw you did the MMA thing. Like ultimately, I want to be designing the uniforms for the UFC. Like what's that look like for y'all, and how do you go about forming vision?
Yeah, just getting into new genres, right, of stuff, like, learning the different trends now, like, tech gear, like tech shorts, and you got to learn. I'm no fashionista, right? I come from the hoodies and Tim's era, right, and the Air Max, right?
Hey, they back though. All right, it's funny how they back.
I see. So with that, you got to learn about the trends. So that's why I always keep the younger people around me to teach me about those, and I try to follow different trends in the sneaker drops, right? And what are they wearing with certain things? Because those are the things that influence streetwear, but also with the streetwear, also learn about how to adopt uniform wise. What are different teams looking for, right? What's in, right? Camouflage was in for a while, then it went away. Now it's in the patterns and different colors. So you have to learn about that. So for me, it's really getting into new genres, forging new relationships with people because we're international, right? Because we have 2 manufacturing plants overseas that we pump out a lot of stuff across the country. And that's how we got 50 Cent as one of our clients, is to do some stuff for him, on some of his drops. So learning how to navigate and work with different people, is a different experience, is how we're going to grow, by working, in new genres with new people, basically.
Yeah. You actually said something that was really, really good that I want to make sure people catch, which is, you said, I'm not a fashionista, right? But I have these people here on my team that they give me an inherent sensitivity to what's going on because of who they are and their age and, where they are in the culture. And so I think that's really a really astute thing that I want to make sure people catch, is having the humility in terms of your team around you that keep you sensitive to your target audience in the direction that you need to be going.
Absolutely. You're only as good as your team around you. So if they're not, being able to provide you with some type of feedback or some type of input to say, hey, this is what I do. Like I got people who play soccer or someone who's into reselling shoes, right? They teach me, I learn from them. And you can't be afraid to learn from someone else. Just because they're younger than you doesn't mean they don't have value or knowledge, because they studied more. Like I'm not on Instagram all day. I'm not on Twitter all day long. I got to meet with people. So they're people, that's their specialty, right? Yeah. So you want to get with people who are SMEs. I call them SMEs. They're subject matter experts, right? And sometimes teenagers are subject matter experts. I know nothing about TikTok, but I know that it's the second highest downloaded application in the world besides WhatsApp, right? So WhatsApp's number 1, TikTok's 2. So what the hell is going on TikTok? Let me see what's happening on TikTok, right? Then I'm learning about Clubhouse. What's on Clubhouse? Who's on Clubhouse? What's a Clubhouse? I don't even have an iPhone, right? So those type of things. No, it's true though. I had to go get an iPhone so I could be on Clubhouse so I could learn. So with that, you can't be afraid to learn from different people. And I think you're always going to be a constant learner. You don't really master everything, but you don't want to be a jack of all trades either, right? You got to have some mastery somewhere to be an expert somewhere. So that's where I try to learn and defer to people who are gurus in their lane.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to pivot here for this last portion. You're a Black man who's an entrepreneur. I'm not even going to go any political space, but you know, I believe that for the Black community, I mean, Dr. King even said it, you know, really the path of progress is economics. And you're an entrepreneur. And so I'm curious just on your experience being a Black entrepreneur slash maybe just touch on a little bit your experience being a Black entrepreneur in this country and that being a route of progression for you as opposed to other things that might be out there.
That's a good, relevant question, honestly. And it's, you know, it's difficult being a Black entrepreneur because a lot of these things were not taught, right? And regardless of, you know, what your educational structure is, no one prepares you to be an entrepreneur, right? The only time you really think about that is people that hustle around the corner all day, right? But
Right.
even that's different. So, you know, with that, that experience is difficult because you don't always have the right resources. You don't always meet the right people to put you in a place to win, right? You don't always know the grant program, or you don't know about a business coach advisor. You don't know about these resources that you have to help build your business. So you got to fail a little bit. And then secondly is you got to come out of your comfort zone. So you can't always be around the same people, right? You have to go outside of that. And unfortunately, as a Black man, you have to go outside to, you know, other races and other people for you to learn. But when you go out there, you're not always accepted, right? You're not always given the information forthcoming. You got to kind of force your way and, you know, get nitty gritty and kind of burrow your way through to say, hey, I'm here. Hi, how are you? Don't forget about me. Don't forget to email me back. Hey, I'll call you next week. And you have to go above and beyond that. And sometimes you have to alter your character, right? You can't always just be so aggressive all the time. Sometimes you have to take a strategic path because when you become so aggressive, you know, it can scare people or people will start to retreat. So with that, you have to be tactical and technical in some of the things that you do in order to get those open doors for you so you can learn from somebody else. And you can't be afraid to be humble and say, hey, I don't know. Can you help me? And ask and say those words. Can you help me? You can't assume that someone's going to help you just because you show up, right?
Mhm.
You have to ask for it. And as a Black person, as a Black man, sometimes, you know, that's the most difficult thing that we have sometimes is to ask for help because we always want to do everything on our own. But the reality is if you don't ask for help and you don't put yourself out there, sometimes the resources don't even come to you. So, you know, and that's the key, you know, is you need resources, you know, you need money sometimes, you know, and even a prime example is the stimulus, right? Every Black person that's a business owner, they probably said, I'm not taking the PPP, right? Because I don't want to owe nobody nothing. But no one tells you the steps and how the PPP works, or, you know, how, you know, you can get some grants to help you out during this time. You don't have to close your door, right? You can find ways to get around it by pivoting, right? That's the key word for 2021 or 20, you know, is pivot, right? But how the hell do you pivot with no resources, right? You need resources to pivot. You just can't say, okay, my store is closed. We going all online. Online is a website. Online is Shopify. Online costs, you know,
It
you
costs
need
money.
Media 360, you know, to come in with the resources for you, right? How do you make this an app? So with that, some of the grants that you have that you can get is because of the shortcoming that you had, you can pivot and go into 2021 with that. But sometimes in our communities, in the Black communities, no one tells you this. And that's the hard part sometimes of being a minority is that the information doesn't get decimated into those inner pockets.
Yeah.
You know?
I do know. I mean, I look at it from afar. You know, I'm not in your shoes 100%, but I look at it from afar. And I think it's interesting too, because I think one of the things even in that, in moving and navigating those spaces along in the way in which you were just talking, I think one of the things that ultimately happens too is you end up finding that in the business community, just like any other community, is that there's going to be times where race has nothing to do with it. And you're going to get the help of someone who doesn't look like you, doesn't come from the same culture, doesn't have the same ideology. And it kind of shatters the narrative a little bit along the way. even though some things are still definitely there intact. But I think it's an interesting thing because some people, you know, if they want to make money, so
Yeah.
they ain't gonna care if you,
It's true.
you know,
It's
like
true.
they ain't gonna care about the fact
Yeah.
that it's like, oh, you got a good idea, you got something working here.
Money is green, bro. It don't matter what the color is sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how some people think. And that's how America was built on capitalism, right? At the end of the day, the dollar's green. Doesn't matter who you get it from or who you get it with. You know, if there's a great opportunity and it's there, it's there. So, you know, that's one thing I will say about being in America is that, you know, we have that opportunity to collaborate and work and meet people. And I think right now with 2021, Zoom has created an opportunity for us to connect and network with a lot of different people to get you out in technology to
Yeah.
get you out, get the resources that you need.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I'll tell you what, I could keep chatting about several different things.
No problem.
And we should do this again. I tell you
Part
that.
two. We'll do
Yeah,
a part
part
two.
two,
Yeah.
part two. And but I'll leave it at that with that last note, man, is just that if you're in business, forget all the differences, be united in solving some problems, and you're probably going to make some money. You're probably going to provide for your family. You're probably going to impact your community, and maybe even do something on a global scale. And so with what you're doing, just shout out to you as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, you're building ultimately, hopefully something that will be a big business, not just a small business. But shout out to you as a business owner, for someone who's in the trenches and taking complete ownership, you know, hunting what they eat. And so, yeah, just thank you for being an example to the business community and for those around you.
No problem. Darius, thank you so much for having me, man. It's my pleasure. And I hope that I was able to inspire and encourage somebody to keep on going. You know, it does get tough. You know, it might look a little grim. You might hear a couple no's and you might have some people questioning you, what are you doing? But at the end of the day, just give it your best shot. You know, give it, you know, what you can do. And hopefully I gave somebody some encouragement to keep on going, to say, you're right here, thumbs up, I see you. You know, that's it. That's it for me. So I'm humbled and appreciative for your time, man. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, this has been episode 3 of the Small Business Diaries with Ashon Avent, founder of Main Avent Sports and Apparel. Thank you for listening with us today. And also, Ashon, real quick, tell them where they can follow you, check out the website, look at everything you got going on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Main Event group.com. So that's event with an A. So maineventgroup.com is our business website. On social media, Instagram is Main Avent Sports. Then we got a new retail boutique we just put up. Is urban7fashions.com. So that's urban7fashions.com. We got the latest styles, you know, some custom gear that you won't see anywhere else on that website up there. So that's another link for us. But you can look me up on LinkedIn, Ashon Avent, or Main Avent Sports and Apparel on multiple different platforms.
Yeah. And guys, feel free to like, comment, subscribe to everything that both of us are doing. Leave some questions for Ashon if you have them. Things that I didn't dive into, take the time and pick his brain. And if you want to hit it up on our channel, I'll make sure he gets the question, find out who you are, and also get back to you.
Absolutely.
All right.